Hello and welcome to episode 11 of the Little Craft Room podcast. My name's Nicola. I run a little craft room in many different places, some of which you can find on my social media links below. I wasn't here last week. It was a bit of a last minute cancellation last week because I work as a teacher, and recently it's just been a little bit hectic. A couple of late nights. I've got another one tomorrow actually. It's parents' evening tomorrow. But I just was not in the right frame of mind to be doing a live stream last week, so it was a little bit of a last minute cancellation. But I knew I just needed to give myself the evening. So I did. So yes, we're back this week. And I've got like a little plan for what I'm going to do later, which I'll talk about in a second. But my featured item for this week is I've got my adjustable mannequin here, but this is my Cordelia Shawl, and I love it so much. This is my latest pattern design. This came out in, I think it was July I released this. But I love it. I'd had it in the pipeline for quite a while. I knew what I wanted to do, and I knew I wanted to use I knew what yarn I wanted to use for it, and I'd had this kind of plan in my mind for a while, and that was where Cordelia was born. So it's actually the first wearable, well, I say it's the first wearable, it's not. I've done scarves and cowls, but this is a slightly bigger wearable item. I feel like they're more accessories, whereas a shawl's slightly more of a garment style thing. So it was my first large wearable. Excuse me. It's made using a Chepius whirl as well as a whirlette, so it uses both for this, and I deliberately matched the colours as well. There is a fabulous guide online. I can't exactly remember the name of the website, but they match the colours with whirls and whirlettes, so that you can have either the middle or the outside matches with a solid colour whirlette. So I used Sea Breeze Tees. That is the gradient one is Sea Breeze Tees, and then this kind of gorgeous dark petrol-y tealy colour, that I believe was Blueberry, and they match perfectly. You cannot see the join in that at all, and it just makes me so happy. This is one of my absolute favourite colours, and I just think it works so nicely as the shawl. So the Chepius whirls are mostly cotton. They're a cotton acrylic blend, 60% cotton and 40% acrylic, and the colours, I mean, I said that it's my favourite colour, but I just love the gradient. I love Chepius whirls have got to be one of my absolute favourite cakes of yarn because of the colours and the way that they blend together. It's just stunning. I love the way that they do it. I have another whirl here that kind of lives on my shelf. That one I'm planning on becoming another shawl at some point, but I have I think it's a pattern. This isn't one that I'm going to design myself. I've had a pattern in mind for a while for this one, but I absolutely adore Chepius whirls. This is the third whirl I've used. I think the first one was the Stormy Day shawl. I used another one for the Celestial Mandala, and then I think this might have been the third whirl I've used, but I just adore them so much, and I knew I wanted to make a shawl using a whirl. Whirls are frequently used for shawls because they're just enough yarn. They're usually about a kilometre of yarn, and they work quite nicely into shawls, and plus the colours always come out. There are so many different colour options, but yeah, I knew I wanted to use a whirl for Cordelia, and so I did, and it was really exciting as well seeing the different colours that the testers came up with as well. I think some of them use whirls, some of them used different yarns. I can't remember the exact ones that we used in the testing process, but it was really exciting to see different colours coming out because it just added something different every time. So that was really exciting. that what I do like about Cordelia as well is she's quite a large shawl. So I find often when I make shawls, if I kind of wear them, they feel more like scarves than shawls, and I like to keep these like the tops of my arms warm. So I knew when I was designing a shawl that what I wanted out of that design was a shawl that could keep my arms warm. So Cordelia is quite large as far as shawls are concerned because of that extra yarn, because I've used the whirl and the whirlette. It is quite a large shawl, but it does mean that there are different wearing options. So I've got some pictures there. So I've one of the pictures that I took was actually wearing it, so I had it tied round at the back. And I just really like the level of versatility that gives. So it can be worn like that, or like a bit more of a scarf style thing. I've got it pinned here. Can you see that? Just about see that. I've just matched the colours too well. So this is a shawl pin that I got a couple of weeks ago at the Liscard Three Bags Full Wool Market, and I can't remember who I got it from. I mentioned it in a podcast a couple of episodes ago, but I can't remember exactly who I got that from. But it just matched Cordelia perfectly, so I knew I had to get it. So yeah, I quite like that you can wear Cordelia like that. You've also got where's the other one? There we go. So you can wear it kind of as a normal shawl draped around your shoulders without the tie, or you can use a pin. And like I said, I just really love the versatility that comes with it. It's made using, like I said, Shepyes whirl and whirlette and a 3.5mm hook. But what I really like was kind of the pattern that came with it. When I say the pattern that came with it, I mean the texture that the fabric ended up making. So it's a repeating pattern. I'm not going to give too much away, but it's a repeating pattern, and I think one of my favourite things about this, and the colour does lend itself to this, is it kind of looks like waves coming towards a beach because of the different kind of repeats. And like I said, the colours really help. But that was part of what inspired the name of Cordelia. I always pick the names of my patterns really carefully, and I knew that it had to be sea related. It absolutely had to be related to the ocean, and I think Cordelia means like daughter of the ocean or something along those lines, and I found that and was like, yeah, that's exactly what this is called. So I knew that she had to be the Cordelia shawl, because like I said, these colours just remind me of like waves coming towards a beach and getting shallower, and I just absolutely loved that. So the Cordelia shawl was born. Like I said, I think I released it in July, but it is available on Ravelry, Etsy and Lovecrafts as well. And like I said, it was really lovely to see all the tester versions coming in with all the different colours. So I always get really excited when I see new versions of my patterns. It's kind of like somebody's done a fresh take on it. I've worn it quite a few times actually. I wore it last week to the theatre, to the ballet, and I did wear Cordelia because it wasn't too cold outside, but I knew that I was going to want something wrapped around, because I don't know about anybody else, but I always find theatres can be a bit drafty sometimes, so I knew I wanted something wrapped around my shoulders, and Cordelia was absolutely perfect for that. So I love it so much, partly because of the colours, but like I said, I really like this repeating pattern. There are some kind of rib details, there are some slightly open areas. In fact, this picture actually shows quite nicely how you've got those sections. But yeah, I had some really good feedback on the pattern so far, and I'm very excited to see any new versions that start to arise. It's always very exciting to see people making my patterns. So I did think I would start off by talking about Cordelia, and I wanted to show it on the mannequin as well, because I can never, when I'm moving about, it never quite sits perfectly the way I want to show it, whereas this, I've managed to get the drape absolutely lovely the way I like it. So she kind of just lives on the mannequin when I'm not wearing her. That's kind of her home. She stays on proud display because yeah, it's got to be one of my favourite patterns that I've made so far. It's definitely the largest pattern I've made so far. I think it used 1,400 meters of yarn. So it's a decent length. But yeah, I'm very proud of Cordelia. So and I always get compliments from my friends as well whenever I'm kind of on streams to my friends or anything. She's there in the corner. So she always does make it in. In fact, she's been there in the corner for pretty much every single one of my streams so far. I thought I would just showcase her a little bit more this time, and make her my featured item. So yes, Cordelia Shawl, pattern written by myself, available on Ravelry, Lovecrafts and Etsy. So what I did say last time, I had some finished objects, and one of those was the Hibernate Blanket. I can now give you the update. It has successfully arrived, and it is at its new home. And I did take some nice pictures of it. So there we go. There was one of the pictures. We had to use the bed because it was so enormous that there was nowhere else to take decent pictures. But I did say I would try and measure it before it got sent off. So when I measured the Hibernate Blanket, it was 1.5 meters wide by 2.7 meters long. So when I said that this thing was enormous, I really meant it. It was absolutely colossal. It was just such a huge blanket. I think it's got to be the biggest project I've made to date, because I've made a couple of blankets at this point, and this one wins by a mile. So yeah, Hibernate Blanket definitely takes the prize of biggest project I've ever made so far. It actually wasn't as difficult to post as I anticipated either. We did vacuum seal it, and it deflated quite a bit in the vacuum bag, because it was kind of that fluffy acrylic yarn, the kind of chenille style yarn. So there was a lot of deflation potential with it. But no, the postage actually was thankfully a lot easier than I was worried it might be. But no, blanket's now at its new home, and it's been well received. So I'm very, very glad about that. It's been a long time in the making. I think I started that in February and finished it 2-3 weeks ago now. So very, very glad to have ticked that one off on my list. So even though we had the finished object kind of roundup a few weeks ago now, I did think I'd give that little update about not only its safe arrival but also the measurements, because I knew I wanted to include the measurements. So I thought I would just give you a little update on the Hibernate Blanket. So in terms of WIPs, the way I thought I would do it this session is most of the time I've been working on things that are Christmas presents that I'm not going to be showing on the podcast, which does leave me with some limited options as to what I can talk about. And I keep saying on here that I don't have that many WIPs. So I thought I'd do a roundup of all the WIPs that I currently have, everything that's currently in progress, to kind of talk about them, and also to prove that I don't have loads. I'm not a serial starter. I do tend to finish my projects. So yeah, I thought I'd show a little bit of everything, because it's not even just knitting and crochet. I do have some other slightly different style of WIPs as well. So I thought I would go through them, and again, a lot of this is about holding myself accountable for finishing my projects. I don't want to be one of those people who, you know, the projects sit there for ages and never get touched, which I know seems rich based on one particular project, but yeah. I'm going to start off with the WIP that isn't just mine. It is a collaborative effort with myself and my knitting and crochet club at school. In previous episodes, I have been asking for Granny Square donations, and I have now received over 300 Granny Squares, and there are still some more on the way. I am blown away by how many I have had. As a result, I am no longer taking any Granny Square donations, so thank you so much to anybody and everybody who has donated, and I'm very excited to see some of these blankets. I will get pictures once the club has finished sewing the blankets together. We've got some that are starting to take shape now, and hopefully we'll have some ready to donate to some of the animal shelters within the coming weeks. But yeah, over 300, and there's still at least one more batch on the way. So I'm very excited to see how these turn out. But yeah, I just can't believe how many I've received. There's so many at school now. One of my cupboards, all my students think this cupboard's just full of textbooks and like equipment. It's not. It's full of yarn and granny squares. It's great. I love it so much. So yes, Granny Square project at school. Like I said, it's a collaborative work in progress. So there's me and the students as well. But yeah, no more granny squares needed. So thank you to everybody who donated there. So I thought I'd update you the first on that one. But speaking of blankets and speaking of holding myself accountable, anybody who's watched some previous episodes of this podcast know that there is one project that I keep kind of procrastinating. I keep delaying it. Actually makes me laugh because on Monday I was at school and somebody said, I don't suppose, have you ever heard of a game called Portal? And I said, oh yeah, I've heard of Portal. I'm making a blanket of Portal. So this is the Portal blanket. It is, like I said, I've mentioned it before. It is a project that I have been making for my boyfriend for nearly 3 years now, and so far I'm averaging at 1 square per year. It's going very slowly. He has been endlessly patient with waiting for this blanket, is what I will say. He's been waiting a long time for this. So I thought I'd tell you where I'm up to. Like I said, we're averaging about 1 square a year, which means I have 2 done and a 3rd one on the way. So the first one that I did, I do need to add some more rows to the top and bottom. When I first put this kind of schematic together, I did it all on a website called Stitch Fiddle, and I thought that it would come out square. I did do a tension square. I thought it would work, and it's come out slightly more rectangular than square. But I redid the calculations. I've worked out exactly how many rows I need to add to the top and bottom. I just have to add them now. So the first one was this one. So anybody who plays Portal will recognise it. Anybody who doesn't, this is known as the companion cube. The Portal games are very, very funny. They're kind of physics-based games, puzzle style, and you have to kind of riddle your way out of a like a science facility. I am planning on playing the games as well. I think I might start over the Christmas holidays, and I'm planning on streaming it as well, partly to motivate myself to carry on with it. I figured if I get really into the games as well, then maybe I'll be like, oh, you know what, I'll finish that blanket because it'll look awesome. And I think it will. I think this will look really, really cool once I've done it. I don't know, for some reason I just keep going, oh, I'll finish that later. So this is the first square I made, the companion cube, and that I finished in December 2020. So like I said, we're a few years down the line at this point, but I'm really chuffed at how well the colours worked out. It's, for anybody that knows the game, it's very recognisable, so I'm really happy with that one. So square 1 is this one, the companion cube. Square 2 I finished last Christmas, around Christmas holidays, and that is this one, which is the Aperture Science logo, which you can see is this one here right at the bottom. So this is the name of the facility, the logo for the facility that you have to riddle yourself out of. And this one, hopefully you can see it's a bit more square than the companion cube one, because I'd managed to redo my my numbers for this one. I haven't quite sewn all my ends in on the back, but I'm very nearly done on that. I think there's only 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, there's only 4 left that I haven't sewn in. So yeah, we've got the Aperture Science logo. I am planning, because what I'm doing is I'm using Stylecraft Special DK. So it's 100% acrylic. I am planning on killing this once it's finished. So for anybody who doesn't know, with acrylic yarn you can do something called killing it, which sounds incredibly violent and terrifying, but you basically take an iron to it, with a tea towel or something over the top so you don't ruin your iron. But you iron the blanket, and with it being acrylic, it melts the fibres, and when they cool down they are essentially melted together, they are locked in. So it's a very permanent form of blocking that you can do with acrylic yarn. And I did a little test, in fact I think it's here, I did a little test swatch, killed it to see exactly how this would form, and you can see that that's just so drapey, and for a blanket that's a rather desirable quality. So when I was debating partial killing or full killing, I got the iron out and we experimented to figure out what kind of texture he preferred. It does feel a little softer for the killing, actually, what I will say. Well, it doesn't feel rough, but you can definitely feel the bumps of the stitches, whereas because of this one they've melted together a little bit more, it's a little bit of a smoother feel to it. So we decided that we quite liked the texture of the killed yarn, so that's the plan once they're all done. So I am making square by square, as you can see. I haven't decided whether I'm going to kill all at once when it's done, whether I'm going to make each square and kill individually. I think it might be best if I make it all and then kill the whole thing, because I don't want there to be strange shape. It's kind of with the joins in the middle, because I'm going to do black to join the squares together, and I'm worried that it might not sit perfectly if I kill each piece individually and then decide to go over the joins. So I'm thinking do it all in one. So yeah, square number 2 was finished last Christmas, and when did I start the next one? I started the next one, I think it was July, August, and I went, no, I'm going to increase my average. I'm going to stop just doing one square a year, and I'm going to speed up the process. It's coming up to the end of the year now, and I have not finished the square. So it looks like I'm sticking with my average of one square a year. But the one I'm currently doing is this bottom one, the cake. As I said, I have started it. This is one of the reasons why it's taking so long, just because there's so much colour work involved, and this is kind of the best way that I have found to do it so far. So that is where I'm up to on square number 3. I am... I've forgotten how many rows in I am. That's how long it's been since I've done this. But I believe I'm probably about 10-15% of the way through. Might be 20% of the way through. Something along those lines. So I have started the colour work of the cake. You can just see that's the rounded kind of side of the cake. And you can see there where I put the stitch marker, so that I could be like, oh, next time it's on the podcast, I'll leave the stitch marker in so you can see how much further I've done with it. It will happen. It will happen. My plan was to get this finished by the end of this year. Whether that happens, I don't know. Christmas holidays, I do find school holidays are a really good one for doing it, because there's so many different kind of colour areas involved. It's not a mindless one. It's not one that I can just sit and do without having to think about it. It's very much one that I have to be concentrating on and constantly checking the pattern for where the colour work falls next. That's my excuse anyway. So I'm hoping to get this one finished by the end of the year, but that will just keep me on my one a year average. So once this is finished, I'm fully planning on immediately starting another one. We'll see. I haven't decided which one I'm going to do yet, because I've put them all into Stitch Fiddle to get my my pattern, but because of how large I've made it, It does mean that I'm having to manually tweak some of it, just to get the absolute crystal clear black white, because it's done a lot of grayscale options. So when I decide which one I'm doing next, I will have to do some minor tweaking, just to get the colours perfect. Which one am I going to do next, actually? I'm trying to decide. Maybe that's something to start deciding over the next couple of months while I continue with the portal blanket. So yeah, it just made me laugh when Monday someone said, "Have you ever heard of a game called Portal?" Yes, I may have heard of Portal. So yeah, that's where I'm up to with the portal blanket. That is my longest crochet WIP to date. I do have one that's been going on longer, but I'll talk about that in a second. So next WIP that I'm going to talk about is this one. This is the Wrenn top by Hollywood Designs. I started this in April, and when I started it, I did say I don't think I'm starting this in the right season, because I would have finished it by summer, and that's not necessarily the kind of thing that I would have wanted to wear in summer. But I thought, you know what, I'm going to start it anyway, and I'm going to be prepared for the autumn winter season. And I got quite far with it, I'll be honest. So this is the body. In fact, let's put it on. So I've done the body. What happens is those ends actually are sewn into a waistband at the bottom. So I haven't made the waistband, but that is it's attached to the body, and that's what forms that crossover that you can see in the picture. So currently it is just a bit of a strange shawl thing, but once I've done the waistband, then that crossover will be achieved. I have also started on one of the sleeves as well, so let's just pop that down there. I have made a start on one of the sleeves. I've done, come on, that much on a sleeve, so they work that way. So the longer you make the sleeve, the wider it gets. But for some reason I just kind of stopped feeling it. I think I tried it on and it was longer than I expected, and because it's made that way, it's not something I can just pull back. I would have to pull back the whole thing and reduce the width of it, and I wasn't prepared to do that, so I kind of just put it away for a little bit. I thought I'm going to want to finish this, but I'm not feeling it right now, and I didn't want to force myself to carry on with something that I wasn't feeling at the time. So it's kind of been sat hibernating for a little bit. I am fully intending to get back to that, because actually I found so often in the last couple of months I've gone, you know, I really wouldn't have minded wearing that top right now. You know, the one that's not finished. So yeah, I am very much intending to get this one done. I think I'm going to really like it when it is finished. It just wasn't quite working up the way it did in my head, which sometimes happens. You know, you see all the pictures, you see how it looks on the people who've made it, the testers, and quite often you'll get an image of how you'll look in it. And when it wasn't quite looking like that on me, I got a little bit kind of disenchanted with it. But it is definitely one I'm planning on continuing. I'm using Shepyes Merino Soft. Is it Merino Soft? Yes, it is Merino Soft. It feels beautiful, this yarn. It's so lovely. It's got a lovely drape to it. So this is 50% merino, 25% microfiber and 25% acrylic yarn. And this is in the colour Clee. But it's this gorgeous kind of deep browny burgundy purpley. I really like this colour. So I am looking forward to getting this done. I think I just needed a little break from it, just to get my love for the pattern back, because I love the pictures of the pattern, all the testers that I've seen with it. I really do like it. I think I just got a little bit disappointed that it didn't look the same on me. It was longer than I expected, but I think it will just look different, not worse. And that is something I'm trying to remember, is that different does not mean worse. So I do have 3 balls of it left. I think one of my panics as well was that I was going to run out of yarn because it was slightly bigger than I expected. So that was also one of the reasons I stopped. But it's not really a good reason to stop, is it? Because the longer you leave it, the less likely you are to find yarn in the same dye lot. So I've kind of shot myself in the foot there. I will now just have to make do with what I've got. If worse comes to worse, I will just pull it back and make it a little shorter, but it will be an entire frog job, and I'm a bit loath to do that, because I mean it didn't take long, I'll be honest. It wasn't the longest project. I can't remember what the hook size for this was, but it didn't take forever. I just, sunken cost fallacy and all that. So that I am very much intending to finish that. I do really like it, and I'm excited at the prospect of getting this done. I think I just need to convince myself that it will be okay. It will be fine, and it will be different, but it might be better, and I might prefer it different. So that one I just need to refresh my enthusiasm. So that is my Wrenn top by Hollywoodwood Designs. Oh, that is not the right button. The next one is the Asana Bag pattern. So this one is it's a pattern that I found in the Shepyes Yarn bookazine. I believe I started this in February, purely because I needed something to do in the car. I needed a car project. So for car projects, my kind of perfect car project is something very repetitive that I barely need to look at a pattern for, and that I can just do with barely any brain power. And I can't remember what project I was on at the time, but it wasn't a car project. It was something a little bit more involved. So I thought, no, I'm going to need something. I knew I was going to be spending a lot of time in the car, and I needed something to work on. So I started the Asana Bag project. So I'm planning on having this to hold my yoga mat, which is also purple. So I thought that would be perfect. So this is a pattern by Henrique Schueling. I hope. But yeah, as I mentioned, it was in the Shepyes Yarn bookazine. I am making it in Shepyes Linen Soft Peacock. I don't know whether that's the colour or the type. I'm assuming it's the colour, because the only other colour note I have is 602. So maybe Peacock is the name of the colour. So this is 27% linen, 47% cotton, and 26% acrylic. I think this is the recommended yarn for the pattern as well. I've still got plenty yarn left in the bag, but it is started. Oh, just pulling it everywhere. So yeah, I've made a pretty decent start, and I should really measure my yoga mat to see how much further I need to take it. And I think I did do most of that in the car journey that I started it for. So it was definitely worth starting. But I haven't really done a whole lot on it since. I think I kind of dropped myself in it because I picked it because it was deliberately repetitive and didn't require thinking about. And then when I was sat at home with the option of having a pattern in front of me, I was like, no, I'm going to do something more interesting, slightly more technical, more complicated. So kind of got left to the side again. Again, this is one I fully plan on finishing because I would like to be able to use it for my yoga mat. you know, its intended purpose. But yeah, this is a very good car journey one. So any long car journeys or train journeys, this is a decent one to do. But I quite like the texture of it. So you can see a sort of texture in the picture. You can see here it's like a shell stitch texture. Yeah, I really do quite like it. It was really interesting though, actually, when it was a little shorter than this, it did stand up on its own fairly successfully. It was almost like a basket, like some kind of bucket. So it was it held its shape rather well, actually. I was quite surprised. But it's quite interesting, actually, because it's one of those where you can store your yarn in it as you're making it. So it's a nice little storage for all the yarn. I'm actually going to pop it all in there. Oh, if I can do it without pulling the yarn everywhere. Oh, it's all going wrong. There we go. So all the yarn needed to make it is now stored inside, but you can see it's not stretching the fabric out too much. It's holding its shape. It's not leaving big gaps in it. It's not pulling the stitches apart. So I'm quite optimistic about this one. I often use the organza bags that the yarn comes in as my project bags, as you can probably tell by the fact that this is the third one I've had out. I do like a pretty project bag, but I also find these quite useful. So yeah, the Asana bag for my yoga mat, perfectly colour coordinated, obviously. Again, like I said, I think this was started in February, and I just kind of stopped for no good reason, really. But again, fully intend on finishing this one. I don't really have any WIPs that I don't plan on finishing. There aren't any where I've got part way through and gone, no, I don't like this anymore. Which I suppose I've been quite lucky about. But yeah, every single one of them I've stopped for, like I said, no good reason. And I do intend to finish them. I think I just get very excited about new patterns. Or I decide to make something as a present and go, well, this one's urgent now, so I've got to put this one down and do this one. So Asana Bag WIP. Speaking of presents, I can't talk about the one I'm making right now, but I'll talk about the yarn I'm using for it. So this is one of my mystery projects. I'm using Cascade yarns in Cascade 220. Hadn't used this before the project that I'm on, but I'm really enjoying it, actually. It's got quite a nice feel to it. I believe it's 100% wool. I think it's 100% wool. Yeah, 100% Peruvian Highland wool. It's an Aran weight yarn, and I think this colour is just called grey. I'm pretty sure this is just called grey. But it's got a really nice feel to it. I don't know whether it's superwash or not. I know that they do have some superwash versions of this, but I can't remember whether this one was superwash or not. But no, I am quite enjoying this. It was a little splitty to start with. I'm using it on a knit project, and I found just on the casting on it was splitting a little bit, but I do find that when I cast on, occasionally I do I twist with the ply instead of against the ply. So sometimes I do find that the yarn opens up a little bit as I'm casting on, but that's just because of the way I do it. So that's a technique problem rather than a yarn problem. But no, I'm really enjoying using this one. It's very squishy, and I love a squishy yarn. So yeah, while I can't talk about the project that I'm doing, I'm enjoying the yarn, definitely. Yeah, so very quick one there because I'm not going to talk about it, and let's put the Asana bag away. So now we come to some slightly different WIPs. So I really enjoy knitting and crochet. Those are the two main ones that I do. But I also do kind of some other stitchcraft as well. I have been cross stitching as long as I can remember. I don't do it as often as I do the knit and crochet anymore, which is a bit of a shame really. But I do enjoy a cross stitch, and I also enjoy an embroidery. So when the 5-year anniversary of the Sophie's Universe blanket came out, one of the kind of promotions that was done was it was like a competition, and it was a Sophie's Universe tote bag, and you had to decorate the tote. So if you got the tote bag, you could decorate it any way you liked, and I think the winner won, I think it was a Sophie's Dream blanket kit. So I got this from Black Sheep Wools up in the northwest, and I started to customize my Sophie's garden, the mandala pattern. You can see I didn't get very far. I always find that embroidery is one of those things that in my head goes a lot quicker than it does in real life. So I did start to embroider that. There we go. Let's get a nice clip of it. You can see I did try some different colours. I tried a few different techniques, but it took rather longer than I intended. So as you can see, didn't finish. Not in the deadline anyway, for the particular competition. But I did get a special mention on the competition page, which was very exciting. I'm slightly worried that I may have paused. Maybe it's just my screen. Oh no, I've not. Okay, sorry, my Twitch just went blank for a second then. I was really worried that I'd crashed, but I think I'm still good. So yeah, I didn't finish the embroidery in time for the end of the competition, but I got a special mention on the results website. So we had the picture of my embroidery, and it was a special mention to mine. So I was pretty chuffed with that. Like, even though I didn't win, I was really happy. I do, again, I keep saying this, I do want to finish it, but this is going to be a really long-term project. This is not going to be something that's going to happen over the next few years. I think I'm just going to slowly do the odd bit here or there, and yeah, maybe one day this will be finished. But I think what I'm finding really difficult about it is because it's a tote bag and it's rather thick canvas, I'm not always getting the needle into exactly the places I want it to go in. So it's not as neat as it could be because the grain of the fabric is so thick. So, you know, pros and cons. But I did rather envy the people who coloured theirs in with some really beautiful fabric pens, because theirs looked awesome, and I tell you what, it will have been so much quicker than the way I did it. But I like making life difficult for myself. So yeah, we've got my Sophie's garden tote. There is another design on the back, which is it's quite an interesting, so it's a one corner of the Sophie's Universe blanket, which includes the entire mandala pattern right from the middle to the edges. I was trying to decide which side to embroider. I'd like to say that I'll do both, but I'm not sure I will. Let's be perfectly honest about that right now. I'm not sure that would be something I would ever finish. So maybe one day I will finish one side of it, but it probably won't be that side. It will more likely be that side. We'll see. Maybe I'll colour the other side in, and then at least both of them have a nice design, but one of them is considerably quicker. So maybe I will colour the other side in with some fabric pens, because that'll mean it looks very pretty. But what I use this for is my final WIP that I'm going to talk about, which is a cross stitch. Now this is a cross stitch that I was actually only talking about this last night. This cross stitch is my longest WIP to date, because I started this in 2018. So we're on 4 years at the minute. And that alone, it's not terrible. But the worst part about this is I have planned out where this cross stitch was going to go, and I bought a frame for it. And when I started it, I looked at the wall and I was like, right, this cross stitch is going to go on that wall right there, and I knew what size I wanted it based on the dimensions of the wall and how it would fit, and I bought the frame to match. We moved out of that house 3 years ago. So that wall stayed blank for the entire time that we lived in that house, because I'd said this is going to go there, and I'd bookmarked it. I was like, this is going to go on that wall, and it's ready for that. And that wall stayed blank. And when we moved into this house, I picked a new wall. I went, oh, this is going to be the wall now where this cross stitch is going to go. And that wall is still blank. And I am adamant that I'm not going to move out of another house with a blank wall that was bookmarked for a project that didn't get finished. So I still have the frame. It's there. It's behind my computer, leaning against the wall, starting to gather dust. Ready for whenever I finish this project. And I don't know why I keep putting it off. I think, like I said, because it's not coming along as quickly as I'm insisting it should. But this is going to look incredible when it's done, because it is a welcome to Hogsmeade cross stitch in the style of those kind of GWR train posters where it's like a slightly cartoony looking image where it says welcome to such a place. So yeah, it is welcome to Hogsmeade. So this is a pattern. I used a Country Magic Stitch pattern. I think that's the name of the design. I think it's just called Country Magic Stitch. I made some slight adjustments to the pattern just based on the size I wanted. So I've kind of tweaked it and adapted it, but it is a Country Magic Stitch pattern. And that's the thing, is I've done probably the bulk of it. I've done the fiddly bits, and for some reason I'm just taking forever about it. But like I said, I am absolutely determined now not to move out of another house with an empty wall that was ready for this. Like I said, I genuinely think I've done most of it. I think I've still got the mountains behind Hogsmeade to do. I've got a couple of bits around the buildings to finish, so you can see I've got some doorways and some windows and some brickwork elements still to do. And oh, I've got to add snowflakes as well, but I decided to do that over the top of the buildings, because if I use one strand, so I'm using 2 strands of embroidery floss for this, and I thought, well, for the snowflakes, if I just use the one strand and go over the top of the existing one, it'll give more of the snow effect. So that's what I've decided to do. But yeah, I really need to finish this, because this is going to be such an incredible piece when it's finished. And when I do finish it, I'm going to stare at it and I'm going to be like, oh, I made that, which is one of the reasons I love crafting anyway, is I love looking at things and saying, I've made that with my own hands and things. So it's going to be phenomenal when it's done. I just need to pull my finger out and get it done, really, because that is going to look so cool. And I've planned that it's going to go in the kitchen. And like I said, the frame's right there. I think it's still in the... Did I take the packet off? I may have taken the packet off. I can't remember. But yeah, fully planning on getting this done. I don't even know when. I'm not going to even try and put a target deadline on this. But I think I do need to get it done. Maybe, and I've been thinking about this for a while now, about how to speed myself up on getting this done. And I'm thinking, if I start doing some outlines of like things like the mountains and the big blocks of colour that are going to be in this, I think maybe if I start doing some outlines in the certain shades and then just filling them in, that might encourage it, because then I don't have to sit at my computer and read through the pattern as I'm doing it. I can just sit and basically colour in. So that's one potential way to help speed myself up with it. But see, I've got it out now, and I really want to, part of me wants to get started on it again now, because I've seen it and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm quite far along with it. But I know that I've got Christmas projects with much more, imminent deadlines. So I'm afraid Hogsmeade will have to wait a little bit longer, just a little bit longer. I have so many things that I keep telling myself I'm going to do in January once I finish these Christmas projects, which I'm worried that I'm not even going to do, because I've definitely overestimated my abilities this year for Christmas, despite the fact that I started in June, something like that. I started the single malt sweater in June, fully believing that that was far enough ahead for the Christmas projects, but I've seriously overcommitted this year. It's massively overcommitted. So yeah, that is my collection of WIPs to date. Like I said, every single one of them I am intending to finish. The one I'm more relaxed about, I would say, is the embroidered bag. That one, that'll get finished when it gets finished, and I'm pretty casual about that. Obviously, aside from the Christmas present one. Oh, I nearly forgot. I do have one more, and that is my teddy task, my teddy project, which I've done no more on since the last time I featured this. But for anybody who hasn't seen, I have a friend whose mum passed away at the start of the year. She did a lot of crochet, and I was asked if I could finish off the projects that she had started and not managed to finish, which I was honoured to do. And this one is the one that I'm currently working on. It's a monkey, which we eventually discovered after several hilarious attempts at trying to figure out what this was. I mean, it's quite obviously a monkey now, but at the time it was a lot more open to interpretation. But yes, I sewn his head and his body together. They weren't together when I first got it, and his ears are sewn on now. I still have his tail and his legs to do. So the legs are made, the tail isn't. So I do need to sew the legs on and then make a tail and sew that on. So he's quite close to completion as well. And I just think he looks so cute. Look at him. He's adorable. So yeah, my apologies. I totally forgot that I did have the teddy task one. I'm hoping to get him done fairly soon, and then I can roll up another one. But given, like, as I was literally just saying, given how many projects I've assigned to myself before the end of the year, I don't know how many more I'm going to get done by the end of the year. Sorry, monkey, I've kind of just wedged you in that bag there. He's looking rather undignified. So yeah, apologies. So those are my my collection of WIPs. That's my roundup. I said partly to keep myself accountable, to make sure that I am finishing these, that I'm not just leaving them to hibernate indefinitely. But yeah, the one I'm most relaxed about is the bag, the embroidery bag. That one, that'll get finished when it gets finished. Aside from the Christmas present that I'm doing, I'd say the one I need to step up on a little bit is probably the portal blanket. So once I've done this year's Christmas bits, I am fully intending on getting that portal square finished and starting the next one, so that I can increase that average that I swore I was going to increase when I started that one in August, and I've just kept it the same. I've just maintained my average rather well. It's kind of a bit creepy, really. But I am not having this blanket take 12 years because obviously 12 squares. I refuse. I will not have this blanket take 12 years. I just won't do it. As patient as my boyfriend has been with this, I think 12 years might be pushing it. And plus, like, I'll get that whole cubby square back, because all of that is just filled with yarn that is for this portal blanket. So apart from anything else, I want more storage space. That's definitely not why I should be doing it, but it's part of the reason. So yes, that's kind of the theme of this week's podcast, was my WIP roundup, which so it's not that many. How many did I have? So portal blanket, Wrenn top, Asana bag, my Christmas one, the monkey, embroidery, and the cross stitch. So that's 7. One of which I'm actively working on quite quickly. Actually, the Cascade one is going very, very quickly. So yeah, it's not awful, and 2 of those aren't knitting or crochet either, so there's a variety of disciplines in there. So yeah, there we go. Not too many WIPs. So every time I keep claiming that, now I actually know how many WIPs I've got on the go. So yeah, there we go. So if you have stayed to watch to the end, I really appreciate it. I am very excited for the next couple of weeks. I'm hoping to be back on again next week, but this weekend, I know it's still November, but it is the start of the Christmas plans this weekend, so I'm very excited. Obviously there's only so many weekends before Christmas, so people start doing get-togethers a little bit early, and the first one for me is this weekend. So that's, for me, that's going to feel like the start of the Christmas season, which I'm looking forward to, because I haven't been feeling it as much this year as I have in previous years. So I'm really looking forward to starting to feel a bit more festive. But hopefully she'll still be on next week. And yeah, have a few more. Maybe I'll have some more WIP updates. Probably not. maybe. So yes, I am going to finish it here, and I'm going to go downstairs. Normally at this point I would watch Bake Off, but it finished last week, so now I'm going to watch the season finale of Andor, because I believe that came out today, and I'm very excited for that. So that is my plan for the rest of the evening. I hope you have a lovely evening as well. I hope you've enjoyed this podcast, and I will see you next time. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.